Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Disney. What happens to Disney after the hostile takeover is completed? Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. First, what do we mean about a hostile takeover? Okay. So activist investor, which is an investor who looks to make change in a company so that the stock winds up going up in value. Their plan, Nelson Peltz and his former Disney chief financial officer friend, is to get onto the board of directors, shake things up, and get them back to the Disney that we all identified with as the real Disney before Bob Iger went completely nuts and basically started destroying all of their brands. The reason Peltz wants to do that is because he knows, like you know, like everyone knows, if they just get back to the way that Disney used to do things, focus on story, focus on character, focus on making stories that are interesting to all sides of the political spectrum, and stop trying to change people's genders, and stop trying to force children to accept their progressive agendas. If they just got back to making good quality entertainment that respected the brands and the families that buy the content, the company would do very, very well. It would easily go back to its all-time high again. Because as Nelson Peltz said in his recent release again, the crucial thing is the Disney flywheel. Every company can have a flywheel, but Disney's was very special. The core of Disney was the brand. It was the intellectual property that felt like family. It felt like quality. It felt like it was unique to Disney. They had a monopoly on family entertainment. It was the gold standard that every company tried to copy and imitate, but could never quite get to that level. That's what Nelson Peltz wants to do at Disney. That absolutely represents change. Will he be successful? We're not sure if he's going to be successful or not. We do see he's got a few $1 billion worth of Disney stock he represents and a reputation for making change at big companies. Although Bob Iger and his board of directors are backing up Bob Iger's way of doing things, and Bob Iger definitely doesn't want change. If Nelson Peltz is successful, and I would call it a 50-50 to be realistic about it, the change will be significant, starting with Bob Iger almost immediately leaving the company. He will not be part of what Nelson Peltz wants to do. As part of Nelson Peltz's back-to-basics strategy, from The Hollywood Reporter, Disney activists fight escalates as Nelson Peltz nominates former CFO Jay Rasulo for a board seat. Peltz's proposal would have Peltz and Rasulo, the former chief financial officer, who was a serious candidate to ultimately succeed Bob Iger as CEO at Disney, would go on the board. That's part of Nelson Peltz's plan. And Rasulo completely gets what Disney is supposed to be. We have some great comments from him. From Variety, and this goes back to when Rasulo was CFO, Disney CFO reaffirms big live-action films must fit franchise mold. And what he explains here is that when Disney spends a lot of money making a blockbuster movie, it should support their franchises so that they have the success of the film, they have the success of the merchandise, and then they continue to build that franchise for the next sequel. He understood that strategy. So when someone like this guy Rasulo sees Bob Iger destroy the Marvel brand, destroy the Star Wars brand, Rasulo knows exactly what needs to be done to fix these brands and to fix this company. We'll cover this further, but Rasulo had a very close tie with IKE Permut. He still has that tie. No doubt they've been talking about this and what they would do differently at Disney for years. Here's what the release focused on when Nelson Peltz announced he and Jay Rasulo would be pushing to join the board of directors. Nelson Peltz said, "I want Disney to get back to the way it was when Jay Rasulo was here as CFO, because that's when the company understood the taste and smell of success." He also criticized Disney directors, including Iger, for not owning as much stock in the company as do the boards of other major companies. The naming of Rasulo, once thought of as a contender for the top job as CEO, as part of Peltz's proposed board slate, is a sign that Trian wants to install a director with deep knowledge of Disney who isn't beholden to the agenda put forth by Iger and the current board. Quote, "The Disney I know and love has lost its way," Rasulo said in a statement. Trian, which agitated for change at several major American brands in recent years, including Heinz, Wendy's, and Procter & Gamble, mounted a short-lived proxy campaign against Disney late last year, seeking budget cuts and a seat on the board for Peltz. In a detailed critique of Disney's management and governance, Peltz said Disney's 2019 deal to buy 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets for $71.3 billion put the company in an unhealthy financial state. That transaction was closer to $52 billion because Disney didn't actually buy all of those assets. Some of them were bought by other companies when they actually closed the deal. Peltz ended the fight in February after Iger promised to eliminate 7,000 jobs and cut $5.5 billion from the content and administrative budgets. But now this time around, Peltz has a major financial ally. Former Marvel Entertainment chief IKE Permut, a close friend of Peltz who lives near him in Palm Beach and is one of Disney's largest independent shareholders because he sold Marvel to Disney, took stock, and of course now the stock is a lot lower than where it should be. Perlmutter has entrusted his stake to Peltz to help him press for changes. Perlmutter shares gives Trian control of roughly 1.8% of Disney. Trian is Nelson Peltz's company. Disney sought to cast doubt on Peltz and Perlmutter's motives in attacking the company, saying last month in response to the announcement of the new proxy campaign that Perlmutter, quote, has voiced his long-standing personal agenda against Disney CEO Bob Iger, which may be different than that of all other shareholders. However, former CFO Rasulo joined Disney in 1986 and held a variety of executive positions over the next 29 years. In 2002, he was named president of the theme parks division. 8 years later, he switched jobs with Tom Staggs, another Disney veteran, and became CFO, a move that put the two men in a horse race to prove their mettle as potential successors to Iger for CEO of Disney. In 2015, Staggs was elevated to the position of Chief Operating Officer, officially making him the heir apparent to Bob Iger, and Rasulo's contract wasn't renewed by the board. Rasulo stepped down as CFO in June of that year, saying it was a true honor to work at Disney for these many years and for a great leader in Bob Iger. Staggs resigned the following year after Iger and the board lost confidence in him as a CEO candidate. Rasulo was succeeded as CFO by Christine McCarthy, who used to be their treasurer, who left the company earlier this year after clashing with Iger and top content executives over budget cuts and other strategic decisions. During his time at Disney, Rasulo was well known for his blunt, forthright leadership style. He rose in prominence as CFO just as Disney was becoming more reliant on building out franchises like the animated Frozen series and plugging them into Disney's famous flywheel. And Nelson Peltz keeps bringing up this flywheel. This is what's broken at Disney. And I have messaged with some of the journalists who write for CNBC and discuss Disney, and they are very generous with their time, and we discuss ideas sometimes. They're still not convinced that the brand issue, the diversity, equity, and inclusion issue is the thing that's really damaging Disney. And of course, there are major changes in the entertainment industry because of Netflix. Everyone agrees with that. But when you destroy Disney's flywheel, what future can the company possibly have? Their content is supposed to be special. If they don't recapture that, some other company will. And that's what Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo want to restore to Disney. That would be the big change after the hostile takeover. The term flywheel refers to the series of products from theme park rides to princess dresses and ice skating performances and licensing all over the place, and sequels. Every kind of merchandise that allow the company to repeatedly monetize its stories and characters. And Disney has had a routine, perpetual reputation of making a lot of money from its licensing. And not just making a lot of money. Disney got paid more because they were Disney. If you had a hit film and you were Sony or you were Paramount, you would get less of a percentage of revenue than if Disney had that same film. Disney got higher percentages. When Marvel was acquired and put into Disney's licensing system, they were able to get more money for the Marvel properties just simply because it was now under Disney and it was considered a Disney brand. In addition, Disney has more operations marketing their licensing and distributing all of their content internationally. It's well beyond streaming. It's always been that way. But Bob Iger's management of the intellectual properties and the brands has been terrible. And that's the major broken piece that Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo will restore, as well as getting costs under control. In meetings with investors and analysts, Rasulo would sometimes present a case study of sorts. He would compare two high-grossing movies, one with tremendous franchise potential and the other with less potential, according to people familiar with the matter. Two examples he would use were Toy Story and Pirates of the Caribbean. He would tell investors Disney's priority was making more content like Toy Story because big franchises were the best way for Disney to grow quickly and generate lots of income. Over the years, Rasulo and Perlmutter, that's IKE Permut from Marvel, have remained close. In the early 2010s, when Perlmutter was chairman of Marvel Studios, he urged Iger to seriously consider Rasulo as his potential successor, before Iger promoted Staggs instead. When Iger told Perlmutter that Rasulo wouldn't be promoted to the number 2 job, Perlmutter responded, "You broke my heart." Larry Murphy, who joined Disney in 1985 and later ran the company's strategic planning division, made Rasulo his first hire and called him a thoughtful, considered executive. Quote, "He has well-rounded experience and he's a strong strategic thinker. He's not going to be a patsy," Murphy said. "I think nominating him is a very strong move." If the hostile takeover from Peltz and his team goes through, Peltz and Jay Rasulo would get onto the board of directors. Adding 2 people to the board of directors does not normally change the control of a company. But Peltz is aggressive, and Rasulo knows the truth. Very quickly, things would change over at Disney. Nonsense that's been going on for years would stop. Bob Iger would leave the company almost immediately. Of course, I'm speculating here, but that's what I think would happen. You would not want to be fighting and having to answer to Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo. Peltz routinely mentions he wants the flywheel restored. He wants high-quality brands that are acceptable to all consumers nationally and internationally. No more woke agenda, no more diversity agenda being pushed into their main brands, because without it, there's no way to keep that flywheel going that inspires the success and the magic that Disney used to have and could easily have again if they just went back to focusing on it. We would also see Nelson Peltz take apart the Fox acquisition and say, okay, this was a disaster. We overpaid either by $10 billion, $15 billion, $20 billion, whatever number that Peltz, Jay Rasulo, and then a few other outside analysts would figure out. That would destroy Bob Iger's legacy. It would be very embarrassing for Bob Iger. Certainly Iger doesn't want to see that happen. But the benefit to Disney of that would be basically just being honest with shareholders and saying, look, we did what we had to do at the time. We overpaid by whatever the number is going to be, $10 billion or $15 billion, and it would allow Disney to take that as an expense against future taxes. They could take that as a one-time charge. Yes, it would make Bob Iger look foolish, but it would save maybe as much as $3 to $5 billion of taxes to Disney. It would actually improve the overall value of Disney just by being honest about what their situation is. I think we would also see a lot more in the way of layoffs. Bob Iger does not like layoffs. He does not care about expenses. We would see a lot more people that shouldn't be at the company no longer at the company. A few more $1 billion worth of cuts at an absolute minimum. $5 billion, $10 billion, who knows how much. Additionally, we would probably see another expense because Bob Iger completely restructured the company after he took it over from Bob Chapek. Bob Chapek restructured it when he took it over from Bob Iger in the first place. Those kinds of massive moves, when you change accounting principles for the company, means somebody has to account for that, and you have to report what the effect of the changes are on your assets. It gets a little bit complicated, but there is no way from the change that Bob Chapek made to the change that Bob Iger changed it back to, that there aren't at least another $3 to $5 billion worth of expenses where Disney declared a profit because of how Bob Chapek structured the company that really should be reversed out as an expense now that they've changed under Bob Iger again how the business is structured. I know it's a little bit complicated. The point is it's more embarrassment for Bob Iger, and it's coming at him like a runaway train. I'm not sure if Disney would be able to go back to making great family-oriented entertainment again. They should be able to do it. It's something they did for years. There are people that are certainly still alive, even if they're not working at Disney anymore, that could make that content. IKE Permut knows what needs to be done. Rasulo knows what needs to be done. A lot of people they used to work with certainly know what needs to be done. They could do it if the new managers decided this is what we want to do. I'm still calling it around a 50-50 chance that a hostile takeover with Nelson Peltz and Rasulo of the board of directors of Disney could actually take place. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.